In the days since the assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump, when an armed shooter shot the Republican nominee for president and multiple bystanders from the distance of over 150 yards, troubling reports continue to emerge regarding the U.S. Secret Service and its ability to achieve its mission. As we mentioned earlier today, the House Oversight and Accountability Committee heard testimony from the Secret Service Director, Kim Cheatle, following a congressional subpoena to compel her to attend before the committee, and now there are many calls from Congress for her resignation. So what did we learn from today's hearing? Joining me now to discuss this is Congressman Eric Burlison. He serves on the House Oversight and Accountability Committee, the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and the Committee on Education and the Workforce. He represents the 7th Congressional District of Missouri. Congressman Burlison, welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Tony.
So today's hearing has been scheduled since last week. Obviously, President Biden's decision to step aside yesterday has overtaken much of the news cycle. Your thoughts first on the president stepping aside and how that's become the focus of the news.
Yeah, I think it was long overdue. It's something that we have been, we have all, the American people have been watching his decline for the last 3.5 years, if not longer, and yet we've been lied to. I think this is the perfect example of a modern day "the emperor has no clothes," and so it just took that debate to demonstrate to the world that that he is clearly not capable for the task. And yet, I think what's interesting about his statement is that he's saying, for the good of the Democratic Party, he's going to step aside. But the question is, what's good for the country? I think if he was really thinking about what's best for the country, he would step down altogether, because these next few months, what's abundantly clear is that we have someone who's asleep at the wheel, who's in charge of the most powerful and important position in the world.
Yeah, I do think that's something to be concerned about. I think this puts us in a very vulnerable state when you consider, this is July, elections November, the next administration does not come in till January. So certainly there's something to be praying about here for folks and for Congress to be looking into. Let's move now to the hearing today on the Oversight Committee had regarding the Secret Service and the attempt on former President Donald Trump's life a week ago Saturday. What did we learn from today's hearing?
We didn't learn a whole lot, honestly. I think the one thing we did learn is that Director Cheatle is grossly incompetent and not capable for the task. Only under the Biden administration can someone perform so poorly and still retain their job. I don't think Biden has fired anyone, even after the awful events after the Afghanistan withdrawal. No one was fired. No, she is not. She's holding on to her position today, and yet previous directors of Secret Service, when assassination attempts have occurred and that was considered a failure, they've resigned. And so she's not willing to do that, but she also didn't have any answers for us today. A lot of the questions she diverted to the FBI. Even when we know that she's been briefed by the FBI, she wasn't willing to comment on what she's been briefed. And so my questions really had to do with what things that she has direct control of, which is the mission, the standards, the protocols of the Secret Service. And she did admit that there was a failure in their mission, and it was likely because of operational or communication failures. But she won't give us any details.
That has to be very frustrating as a member of Congress, and this is a constitutional duty of Congress to have oversight of these federal agencies, and they come in, and I see this, you see it, I see it. They come in and they never answer questions. They refuse to answer these questions. How do you compel them to answer the questions that Congress needs answers so that they can do their job?
Yeah, Tony, I think until Congress starts flexing its muscles and using the power of the purse, doing things like implementing the Holman Rule, which is a provision that allows us to zero out somebody's salary, eliminating the appropriations for people's security clearances once they've retired. Unless we start taking some actions on people who have abused their power, abused their position, I think we're going to continue to see blatant disregard for the rule of law and for any elected office holders.
You know, I think you're absolutely right. The power that the Congress has is the power of the purse. They are the ones who approve the budget. They put the budget together. Obviously, the president signs it, but they're the ones that control it. And, you know, I think these agencies, when they refuse to answer questions, you should start for every question not answered. Well, that's $50 million out of your budget, and just start, chipping away at their budgets. That'd be one way to reduce federal spending.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we rewarded the FBI with a new headquarters after all of this that they've done to the American people, to Catholics, to parents who protest at public school meetings, and how they spied on the president. But yet we rewarded them with the new FBI headquarters. Sadly, this Congress, unfortunately, this makeup is not interested in using its power of the purse to rein in the bureaucratic swamp here in D.C.
Congressman Burlison, she admitted that she was, the agency failed and she was responsible, which, I have to commend her for doing that. But as you pointed out, in previous cases, the Secret Service directors have resigned. There have been multiple calls for her to resign. She has said that she is not. Why do you think that is? Any indications from today's hearing?
Yeah, I think because she's working under the Biden administration. The other thing I'm wondering is she waiting for a particular time frame? Because she said that repeatedly she's been here 29 years. Well, maybe it's 30 years is the mark that she's looking for before she retires. I don't know what the answer is, but ultimately the Biden administration doesn't hold anybody accountable. In his administration, the inmates run the prison. And so why would she do anything? Because at the end of the day, she's not accountable to anyone. What's frustrating to me is she can say all these words like the buck stops here and that I take full responsibility, but those are just words. She's not actually taking responsibility and doing anything, in response to this failure of the mission of her agency.
Now, there has been credible reports. There have been credible reports that the Trump detail repeatedly made requests for more resources that were denied. Now, this contradicts Director Cheatle's remarks. Any new information come forth about that today?
Yeah, I think she was trying to split hairs there. Whenever she was asked, she was specific to say that there was no request for that specific event on that day, that the Trump team had not made a request for that event. So what that suggests to me, and what we repeatedly try to get her to answer on, is that there have been previous requests, and at some point, the question is, the Trump team probably got sick of asking and being turned down. So there were clearly requests that have been made in the past that have been turned down. She's not willing to give us those specific events.
Congressman, I think tomorrow the Homeland Security Committee is also going to have a hearing. They're going to focus more on local law enforcement and the role that they played and what they saw. But what we've seen from Director Cheatle is that she's kind of shifted some of the blame to local law enforcement. Did that come up in today's hearing?
I didn't recall her shifting that blame, but what's clear is local law enforcement is taking responsibility. They've done actually a press conference. She's not even done a press conference. Alejandro Mayorkas, who is her boss in the Department of Homeland Security, they've not done a press conference on this. The White House has not done a press conference. So local law enforcement, if anyone's taking responsibility and trying to be transparent, it's the local law enforcement.
Congressman Burlison, always great to see you. Thanks so much for giving us a readout on today's hearing. Appreciate it.
Anytime.